2025 has been such a transformative year. It was number 9 year according to numerology, and also a year of the snake energy according to Chinese traditions, which means that it was all about inner transformation, about shedding old layers of yourself, about this whole process of inner rebirth, not so much of external growth, but more towards your internal evolution, internal transformation. And that's exactly what happened with me as well. So, today I'm not here to give hacks. I'm not here to talk about how you can grow and build and all of those things, but I'm here to talk about my own story with burnout, how I learned so much about myself in this whole year, because I went through this period of burnout and then eventually learning so many things about myself in terms of how I view success, how I view productivity, how I view money, all of those things. So I wanted to just come out here, talk about it, share this because I know that there are a lot of people out there who have also been probably going through very similar things or have at some point gone through this process of burning out, of learning about achievement and overachievement maybe. So this has happened actually around mid 2025. Until now, I've just been procrastinating to talk about this. But maybe because it is a little bit scary to talk about your own journey and just come out there and be vulnerable. But either way, I think I decided to go for it because it's important to talk about these things so that people can not only learn from it but also get the sense of relatability, get the sense of okay, I'm not alone. And maybe even if even if you're not really aware of your thought processes, of your ways of relating to success and money, you probably find some resonance with it and then maybe start shifting towards a more healthier way of relating to these concepts of money and success. This is the Life Reimagined podcast. I'm Aditi Goyal, and this is your space to explore growth, healing, and living life on your own terms. Because sometimes all it takes is one conversation to shift everything. So, a little backstory before we go into it. I have almost always been this very overachiever person who is, of course, very passionate about work, very interested in what I'm doing. But I will take on a little more than I can handle, and I'm almost like this taskmaster, and I'll get things done quickly. And speed is something that really is my. I don't know if I should call it a strength or just a trait or just or a weakness, maybe even, but I'm always very fast with things. So it's good to get things done, but it also means that my mind is constantly overstimulated, it's constantly in that switched on mode. And so, since I'm running my own business and I work from home most of the times, my friends usually ask me, how do you get the motivation to get up every day and work? Because there's no boss standing on your head telling you to, okay, get this done by this particular date. And I've always told them that that's just never been a problem with me. For some reason, it's never been a problem for me. I've always had loads and loads of motivation. In fact, maybe a little too much of motivation, where I find myself, managing two, three things at a time. Not right now, but earlier on, which is what led to the burnout in the first place. But yeah, so basically that's just someone that I've always been. And when I'm in the zone, it's so hard to stop what I'm doing. Even if I'm hungry, even if I'm having a coffee on the side, I will keep sipping on the coffee very unconsciously, not really knowing that I'm actually having coffee, because I'm so hyper focused on the work that I'm doing. And it might, on the outside, these might seem like very good traits, like, oh, I'm so focused and I'm so motivated, and but these, as I realized, were signs of something very different, something else entirely, which we will get to in a bit. But basically, I would be in this state of very, very hyper focus, not knowing where I am, completely zoning out of my of my surroundings, of whether I'm hungry or not, whether I'm actually having coffee. I have no idea what I'm doing. So um and actually later on I realized that this whole thing of being unaware of your body and or your environment is actually called something, and it's called functional freeze. And it's actually a dysfunctional nervous system state, and I feel like I've been in that for as long as I can remember without actually knowing that that's not the normal state to be in. But basically, it puts you in this constant go, go, go mode. And you're so focused on your work that you stop noticing your surroundings, you stop noticing your body cues. And so it's actually a very stressful state where your nervous system is stuck in overdrive, even if it feels like you're just productive, even if it feels like you're just motivated, you're just getting things done, but your nervous system is actually overstimulated, overwhelmed, and so it kind of shuts off and cannot really tune into what's going on outside. Now, the whole reason that this whole burnout phase came into place was because I would usually get very quick and easy results, the kind of results that I wanted with my work, with my studies, even with my business. But since about a year or two, things have sort of slowed down, the outcomes have slowed down, and they weren't missing. They were always there, but they were slow enough for me to feel like nothing was really happening, nothing was moving forward. And so this is what actually put me into burnout, not once but multiple times, because it would be this in I would be in this place where I feel like I'm putting in so much, I'm doing all that I can, I'm putting in all the effort, and still nothing is really coming out of it. I'm not getting to the place that I want to be at. So I would realize when I'm burned out, because I would feel so angry, so irritated, so frustrated, and usually it would be for no reason. I would just act out with my family members, and I would also feel very blocked in terms of my creativity and not feel motivated to do anything, which was very unlike me. And I wouldn't want to meet friends. I just wanted to rot in bed and just doom scroll, and I didn't feel like myself, which is when I realized that something is not okay. I'm probably burnt out. And so I would decide to take a pause. I would give myself a month, no work, just do whatever you want to do. And I would completely just pause everything, but just for a month. And then I would go back to it. So that whole month of not working would definitely help. Made me feel much better. I would get more energized, and almost feel like it refilled my cup, and then start working again. And the funny thing is, even in that 1 month of not working, my brain would still be working, right? It would still be ideating. It would still be noting down things that, okay, this needs to be done, or this is a good idea that I can work on, and it would still be ideating. So it was not actually taking a pause. It was not resting. But either way, this process worked for me. It worked quite well, and I did this like 2 3 times, I think, maybe in the past year, where I would take a break. In every 3 4 months I would feel burned out, and then I would take a pause for a month, and then get back to the same thing again. So it worked, and this cycle kept on going until about 2025 August, where this whole system that I made for myself just collapsed, right? I couldn't just work endlessly for 4 5 months, then take a pause for 1 month, and then go back to being the same person working in the same way, hyper focused, not aware of anything, just kind of doing things without really feeling like I'm getting anything out of it. So I was utterly exhausted from this whole cycle, not just from work, but also just generally how things were going, how my business was progressing. And then I finally decided to stop working again and just be. And this time I was like, you know what, I'm not going to give myself a time frame either. I'm not going to give myself just a month. I'm just going to stop working until I feel like there is some change inside, right? Not just like a break which helps me feel energized again and then go back to it, but something actually needs to shift in the way that I'm approaching my work, in the way that I'm approaching all of these things. And it was this period of doing nothing, this space of just being and of just figuring things out, that was so profoundly transformative. It was so filled with breakthroughs and insights that completely shifted me from inside, you know. It was the most I have grown in a month where I wasn't even working. So of course, at that time, it felt absolutely pathetic. It felt like I was dying from inside. And it was almost true in a way where an old version of me was dying. My old thoughts, patterns, beliefs, the way I showed up was dying, because that had to happen for me to become a new person. And it felt quite terrible at the time, and it felt that nothing would ever get better. But now that I'm out of it, I know why it had to happen in that way. It all makes sense because I now know that I see money, success, self worth, feminine energy, all of these things in a completely different way. So I've learned more about myself in this season than I have in years. And I wanted to share it with everyone because I know that there are so many overachievers out there like me, especially women who are told to just keep working, keep hustling, you know, keep pushing, constantly be in this go mode, even when it's just slowly burning them out from the inside and they're losing their spark, their creativity, their motivation. They've just become almost like a machine, just constantly producing output without actually feeling good about it, without actually being inspired, without being satisfied with their work. So, here are some of the realizations that I had about how I had been operating and why this was draining the life out of me, why this led to a burnout in the first place, and why I had to change these ways of being, from the inside out, not just take a pause for a month and then get back to it, but I had to really put in the work to change these things so that I could show up at work with a lot more joy and a lot more excitement, um, and a lot more internal motivation than just waiting around for success, waiting out for results or for more money to be the motivator. So I'm going to just mention the realizations I had, and then I'm going to discuss each one of them in detail in the next episode, in part two, so that we can all learn from these things. Because again, I feel like these are things that apply to a lot of people, because of the society we live in, because of the conditioning that we have taken in, from our families, from the society in general, from the culture. We are very prone to having these very same patterns that I realized I had. So the first one was that I was operating from my masculine energy like all the time. And there was no sense of enjoying what I do. There was no sense of doing it because it gives me joy. It was doing it just because it had to be done, just because, you know, it was not safe to not do it. The second one was I realized that I was attaching my self worth to my productivity. And if I didn't have a productive day, I would feel extremely guilty. I would feel extremely low, about myself, and I would have a lot of negative inner chatter where, like, you know, why are you wasting your time? And what are you doing with your life? And you're never going to get anywhere, and things like that. So, that attachment of if I'm not productive, I'm just useless, that was again one of the factors that led to burnout, and one of the beliefs that had to change for me to be happier with my work. Now, this one is a big one, and I think this is almost a universal one, which is I realized that I had a wounded relationship to money, um, because I was hitting an income ceiling constantly. Even though I would put in more efforts, I would put in, I would create different things. I would, really build on the business, but the income would stay the same. The revenue that it made would stay the same. It is almost like it just can't go beyond this. So that's when I realized that there's something about my energetic relationship with money that's keeping this blocked. And I think this whole money mindset can be talked on for hours and hours, and it can have its own special episode. But for now, yes, I realized that it was not enough to just keep pushing. I had to first stop, pause, look at my relationship with money, understand why I'm not feeling safe going beyond a certain number, and then work from there. Now, the next one, which hurt a little when I realized it, it almost felt like a little bubble, burst. It was this realization that my passion, which I was so, happy about, that oh, I'm so passionate, and I always identified myself as a very passionate person, and I came to realize that my passion was more so an addiction. It was a way for me to feel good enough. It was a way to fill a void, right? Because if I didn't work, I felt empty. It felt like there was a void that had to be filled. So, more than it being a passion, it was an addiction. Not that passion was completely absent, but it did have some elements and some energy of addiction to it. The next one was this realization that I was never present. Most of my life I have spent in the future. I have always been in the future. I've always been planning. I've been visualizing and manifesting, and just always in the future. So even if I'm writing an email, I'm not actually focused on writing the email. I'm focused on the outcome it's going to create and how the other person is going to respond, and then what is that going to lead to. So the point is that I was just never in the present moment, and that drained the energy out of me completely. Of course, I will go much deeper into all of these different realizations, because I know that these are very applicable to a lot of y'all and to a lot of people in general. The next one was that receiving was a task. Okay, so I realized that receiving was not very comfortable to me. So I would be very okay with giving, whether it be cooking for someone, giving someone a gift, whatever it is. But receiving it was a task. It just felt uncomfortable. It felt like I've not really earned it, or why do I really get to have this? So it was a very weird sense of not being comfortable with receiving, which makes sense because if I can't really receive a small gift, a small dinner, then how am I supposed to receive more abundance, more money in my work, in my business? So it's like I'm doing the work and I'm giving the output, but because my receiving channels are sort of blocked, it's just not coming back in. Now, the last realization that is worth talking about is that I was not operating from this sense of service or this sense of passion or this sense of, wow, I get to do this work, I get to help people. But it was more from a place of lack. It was from a place of, there's not enough, so let me do more. I'm not doing enough, so let me do more. It was coming from this whole energy of lack, and that's why what it created was just more lack. In spite of doing way more than I did initially, putting in way more efforts, the outcome was always this feeling of lack, like it's not going anywhere, there's not enough, right? Because that's the energy I was pouring into it. So these are just some learnings that I really had, which completely shifted how I now see success, money, self-worth, and all of these things, and how I show up for work, and of course other areas of life, because it's never so separated. How you show up in one area of life is always a reflection of how you show up in another. So in the next episode I will take you through all of these in detail, because they changed everything for me, and I know that they might shift something for you too. Because the energy that I was in, the chase, the desperation to get outcomes, the endless working, that is what actually blocks growth. That is what actually blocks manifestation, because it blocks your emotional aliveness. It blocks, or rather, it drains the life energy out of you. And you can't focus on embodying the future version of you because you're not capable of feeling anything. You are in this free state where you've completely numbed out, and you're just almost stuck and emotionally numb. So this is exactly why it blocks manifestation, because you're not magnetic when you're frozen, even if you are performing well on the outside, if you're even if you are being very productive on the outside. So stay tuned for part two, where we go deeper into all of these different learnings. And do comment below if you've had your own experience with burnout and what you've learned from it, what happened, and how you're learning to now show up differently. And I'll see you next time.